So I learned from the last speaker, I have rides for questions. All right, so anyone ever heard of SolarWinds? SolarWinds? One or two of you? Yeah, everyone raise their hand. Anyone ever heard of Orion? One, two. So Orion's basically their product that does everything. It includes all of their products inside of it. It does a lot of interesting things. Hopefully this thing works. Yay, it does. So it does network performance monitoring, server application monitoring, and monitoring and monitoring and monitoring. Work. Okay, I'm going to have to go over here. So this is their Orion platform. This is what I'm interested in as an attacker. And that. And that. And that. Centralized settings and access control. Basically, this is home to any attacker. This is where all of the good stuff is at. So I didn't know about SolarWinds Orion until I ran into it on an engagement. And the only reason I knew about this product at all was I was on the database without knowing. Like, I had accessed the SQL database that runs this thing, and all I saw was a SolarWinds Orion database, and I had to look it up. So what I did was, like any good attacker, I downloaded a trial. And one of the things I noticed on this trial was that the default username and password was pretty simple. Before I go there, though, I wanted to show something new. So after I installed SolarWinds Orion, I noticed that it listened on port 8787 for the web interface, which is cool now that I know what I'm looking for. I was on the database, but I wanted to know where I could get the web interface. So now I knew how to do that. But the other thing I noticed was that it listened on a lot of ports, like a crazy amount of ports. So I got rid of all the Windows stuff, and this still was what SolarWinds installed. So anyone notice anything interesting in that list? Anything fun? What? Erlang distributed node. Correct. Anyone know what that can do? Connects you to the cluster. What can a cluster do? What can Erlang do? Replicate data, but it also has this set of information. Anyone see anything interesting in that list? Here, I'll help you. Yeah. So that's my demo later. So we'll get back to that. So let's go with authentication. So I already talked about authentication, how it was pretty simple. The default account was admin, you guessed it. There you go. Oh wait, no it wasn't, it was admin blank. Even better actually, that works. So it's cool that it's admin blank, but it does force you to change it, which was awesome. So props to SolarWinds for that. But I wanted to know where the credentials are. That's why I'm going after this thing. This thing houses credentials for basically everything in the organization. It's the asset management. It's where everything is. So if I have credentials to things, then I can go anywhere I want. So it houses ESX credentials, SNMP3 credentials, Windows credentials, and obviously the Orion credentials to itself. And it does this in a secure fashion, right? So I wanted to, when I first logged into it, I'm like, it can't just show you the credentials, right? It doesn't do that, right? Because that would be bad. Boo. It didn't. And then I noticed that it had this database tool. So I opened up the database tool, and I was on the assessment, I was already on the database, so I didn't need this. But I wanted to connect to it and look through my database on my trial so that I could see what was there, so I knew what to look for, because I knew what the data on there was. And I opened up this database tool, but there was no database populated in it. And then I noticed a button at the very top. Anyone see it? So add server, that makes sense. About that other one. Add default server. What does that mean? I clicked the button, and guess what happened? It connected to the database. I was like, that's awesome. How did it do that? So before I get to that point, I want to look through and see, hey, where are the actual credentials to my data, right? So I had that little inkling in the back of my head saying, how did it connect to that database? But I wanted to find the credentials. That's what I was going after on this assessment, and I had a very limited time to figure this out. So I looked in, obviously, the credential area, right? That's the credential database, so, or the credential table inside of the database, so I looked there. So it had some kind of password, but that was not my password. It had encryption, right? Base 64 is encryption. You can't convince me otherwise. So it wasn't actually just base 64 encoded. So I wanted to know how it worked. Anyone ever decompile a DLL before? It's really easy. You throw it in dnspy or ilspy, and because it's .NET, it just comes out. Anyone ever used ilspy or dnspy? Yeah, it's a pretty cool tool. If you see, if you see the .config anywhere, see the top of the job.dll and then the .dll.config, you automatically know it's basically a .NET utility. So drag and drop, pretty easy. And this is where I'll be quiet for a second so you can read. So I became a reverse engineer with drag and drop. Oh yeah. You saw that coming, right? All right, so going through here, there's the security DLL, which is awesome. So I looked in here, and there was a couple things that jumped out at me. Anyone see them? Encrypt, decrypt. Yep, there you go. So I looked in here, and that's not much to it, right? They're like, wah, wah. I was trying to figure this thing out, and it's not helping me. So I looked further, and I saw that the decrypt was certificate-based. I'm like, all right, that's kind of cool. How do I get this certificate? Like, what is the certificate? How do I find it? So at the very bottom on the left, you see that it's the CN for the certificate is SolarWinds-Orion. So I started looking for the certificate, and I found it in the computer account. And there it is. But it couldn't be exportable, right? Like, no one makes it exportable, right? Because it would be bad if it was exportable, right? Oh, yeah. So exportable cert, but it can't be the same cert in every install, right? Luckily not. It actually was per install, but since it's exportable, it's very easy. So once you have the cert from an Orion install, it never changes the cert. So if you popped an Orion box in 2005, and they've been upgrading ever since. You can pop right back on to that database and pull everything you want. So let's get back to my scenario, though. I was on the database, so I couldn't get the cert, except for XP command shell. But we'll talk about that in a second. So what I did was I took all of the .NET DLL code, pulled it over to my own .NET code, like a real reverse engineer coder does. It's awesome. Just copy code from Stack Overflow. Paste it in, take my password, and I simply had the ability to decrypt it. It was awesome. What about those Orion users, though? So that code had all the passwords for the administrator or domain admin accounts that I had in Orion. And Orion has an agent, but most people use it to go talk to boxes directly because they don't want to install another agent. So almost every single time, the users that we just talked about are domain administrators. So decrypting that's awesome. But what about the Orion users? I want to be able to log into the interface. Anyone see anything weird here? Yeah, it expires in a long time from now. What else? So it has that password hash thing again, like base 64. So let's try that. All right, so I copy the exact same encrypted text and paste it, and it's the same encryption. So that one certificate gets me all the ESX creds, all the Windows creds, and all the Orion creds. But what about that password thing? It's a bunch of ones and zeros and numbers and stuff. It's not a hash. That's weird. Why would it store? Oh, that can't be right. What is that? So I looked through, and I found where it did this. So I had to trace through the code, so I became a senior reverse engineer at this point, right? Looking through that code. And I find this obsolete tag. You guys see it at the top? Here, I'll make it bigger for you. Do not use this code. But it was using it. I saw the passwords in there. So first of all, it says it's not FIPS compliant. So I tried to turn on FIPS to see what would happen if I turned on FIPS and changed the password. Would it change that code? And when you turned it on, when you turned on FIPS compliance, the entire thing broke. Like, Orion wouldn't start, the database wouldn't start, like all of these things, and at least the trial broke. So you can pretty much guarantee that no one has this turned on, unless they did a lot of work to turn it on. So looking through the code, yep, they are definitely using hashed password with hash password and encrypted password all together. So I still didn't know what this one's numeric only password hashing crazy awesome encryption was, right? So I looked and just copied all the stuff out of it where it was doing the encryption, and it decoded my password. Okay, so it was literally encoded. No cryptography involved at all. No hashing, nothing. So it was just, they took base 64 and said, we're going to do this better. And they did a bunch of numeric algorithms on it, and that's all it was. But anyone notice anything weird about my password? Uppercase. It's all uppercase. I didn't set it all uppercase password. Anyone remember something called LM? Yeah. So before I get too far, before I go on to the next spot, so I tried logging in with an all uppercase password, and it worked. So finding number 2, the encrypted passwords, doesn't use any system data to do anything. So once you have this encryption, once you have this basic encoding code, you can take any one of these passwords if you have access to the database and decrypt the passwords. So back to my engagement, I was actually on this database, so I took my handy dandy code because I didn't have the cert, and I was able to log in with all of the usernames and passwords that the client had set. Cool beans. Now I had access to the console. But let's get back to that database. So that configuration wizard for the database, I also noticed as another tool. Anyone ever used Bullet's pass view? Basically takes any bulleted window inside of Windows and looks behind the stars. And you can see the password now. So that if you have access to the actual Orion system, you can get the database password this way. Or if you just add the default password or default server, you can hit that button. It automatically connects. Then you look at the connection string under server details. And I'll show you this in a second, a little bit more if I have time. So the way that the thing is, though, I wanted to figure out how it was doing this. I wanted, these 2 executables were figuring out this database password before it even accessed the database. So any Windows guys in here? Any Windows guys or gals in here? Real big Windows. Do you know what ODBC is? It's a pretty decently secure way of storing credentials to a database, right? You have to have the crypto stuff. So Orion probably uses that, right? That would make sense for the auto connection to happen. So I started looking for this thing, and I couldn't find it in ODBC. And so I couldn't find it anywhere. There was no database config. There was nothing. So I started up Procmon, or Process Monitor, and started looking for any file this thing was connecting to. Reverse engineer like admin now. I'm director level. So looked in, and I found this swnet-perfmon-db. It was the only thing I hadn't looked at yet, so I opened it. So what kind of database do you guys think this is? So it has to access it before the actual SQL database, Microsoft SQL database is open. So SQLite, yeah, probably SQLite, right? Something, something secure-ish that they can store stuff in, encrypted or something like that, right? Nope. Straight up file. Yep, so that encrypted password. How does it encrypt the password before it can even access anything? It stores it in the exact same DLL method as before. So if you have the cert, you can decrypt the database password too. There's one small issue with this database password thing, though. It stores all of the connection details that it's ever had. So if you've upgraded the database, if you've upgraded SolarWinds, so this is SolarWinds 6, SolarWinds Orion 6, I believe. In 5, it didn't have a FIPS compliant encryption password or method. In 4 and 3, all of these different versions, it's pretty recent. So when it stores the connection string, it has it unencrypted. And then when you upgrade it, guess what it did? Enter, 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 enter. New connection string. Comment out the old one. So I can't show you, but it's so amazing because it was a client database. But the client's database connection, this file right here, once I get access to the Orion box, had like 10 years worth of connection strings. And only the top one was encrypted. And guess what? All of those databases still existed. So I had access to like database servers that still existed, but just didn't host the Orion database anymore. And they had other data in there, like client and credit card and all this other stuff. It was great. I had a lot of fun on that. So clear text and all configurations stay in there. SolarWinds says that they use the DP API to encrypt that password, but I have valid and 100% proof that they do not. Because they can't, because the DP API uses user-based credentials or user-based certificate or encryption to encrypt the data. And if you had that, then you'd have to have it for every single user because every single user can double-click and open the database configuration. So it doesn't make sense that it'd be DP API. So that's so here's the end results. So we had an exportable RSA key, fix compliance if you can. How to fix the SW perfmon stuff is to remove it, and basically to fix this thing is to only require RDP access if possible, nothing else. And there really isn't a way to fix the encryption part other than turning on FIPS. So once you had FIPS turned on and you did all of the configuration changes in the database and otherwise to get SolarWinds working, it stopped using that encoded password. So I'd say that overall they got an A. And because no talk is completely done without a meme, a Sun Tzu quote, and a cat picture, that's that. And I'm not done. Don't start clapping. Because what I have for you guys is the Erlang stuff. So this is basically so once you know this Erlang cookie, can you guys, you can't see that. How do you, let's change the resolution real quick so it's a little bit bigger. Displays. Let's go 720p. Let's see if this works. Sweet. That looks a lot better. So once you have access to a SolarWinds database, SolarWinds server, once you have access to the server, export the cert, get that cert, because you'll be able to decrypt passwords forever. And there's no functionality that I could find to regenerate that cert. So you have to do it manually and just name it the same way, because all it's looking for is the CN. Anyone ever used RabbitMQ? A few of you? OK. So RabbitMQ uses Erlang? Yes? I'm guessing because this is how it works as far as I can see. And to do that, it has this Erlang cookie. So this is the Erlang cookie. Once you have this cookie, it doesn't change on this database. And it's basically remote code execution. I'll wait for you. So here we go. Come on. All right. So let's do the. So since I'm a reverse engineer, I need to take the next step to exploit dev, right? So we're gonna pop calc. All right. So here we go. This is how we're going to pop calc. So, oh, you can't see that. Why can't you see that? That is so weird. I'll just have to highlight it every single time. All right, so Erlang, you just install Erlang, type in URL and sname. So honestly, I don't know what sname means, so I just picked a default one. So then you do net, and you can't see this yet, so I'll just type it out. Kernel connect, rabbit. So everything ends in a period. It looks like my connection failed, which is not cool. We're going to try to continue anyways. So in this connect, you have to use a host name or a fully qualified domain. And so I just added it to my Etsy hosts. And then Erlang. Spawn. Let's see if this works. Have it at Orion OS CMD. Oh, you suck. All right, let's try this one more time, and then I'm going to give up and say goodbye. Abort. It worked before, I swear. Anyone know what I'm doing wrong, other than being on stage and trying to do a demo? So I literally have notes on this, and it wasn't working. So, Ryan, still giving false. I don't know why the connection's not working, but essentially those three commands, I'll do the last one so you can see it.
Use win-pm something. That's the other name for the same IP address. That one. Use this one.
Use that one? All right. Let's do it live. That looked like it worked. Hold on. Not there yet. And then Erlang. Spawn. Will it blend? Come on. Did it run? Boo. Okay. So essentially these three commands, and I'll highlight something else. And I'll post this on a blog post once I get home and have my notes again. Essentially these three commands net you a spawned calc or whatever you want. And all you have to do is once you have that Erlang cookie, is just paste it in your own Erlang cookie spot, and you can't see that because of this stupid thing. So there's the Erlang cookie. So once you have once you have that cookie, you're done. And the great thing is that this is not just a SolarWinds thing. It's a RabbitMQ thing. So if you find that port or find an open distributed Erlang anywhere on a network, once you have that cookie from that system, and searching around GitHub, I've actually found cookies posted for different RabbitMQ setups. Yeah. It's very easy to get code execution. Well, obviously not easy enough to do it in front of a lot of people, but you can see how it goes. All right, so questions. First of all, anyone know what a Bash Bunny is? It's the new Hack5 product. It does serial, HID, network, and mass storage all in one device. Makes attacks really easy. All right, question, yeah.
Hi. You said at the very beginning of the presentation there is a price for the question. So I want to know, do you always wear a gray hat?
Do I always wear the same hat?
Gray hat.
A gray hat? No.
Okay, thank you.
It's what I get for not setting expectations. Next question has to be a little harder. There you go, sir.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes?
Do you often get these kind of scenarios during the test assignment that you can actually do some research? And how often do you have time to do this research during the assignment?
Well, so the question was, do I often get time, or at least this kind of research time during tests? There we go.
Okay, hello, can you hear me? Oh,
Nope.
perfect. Okay, so regarding the thing that you showed before with the Orion, you had the database and you were actually you had to, like the reverse engineering that you did. So do you have often like scenarios like this during a penetration testing assignment that allows you to explore some new possibilities and, I'm asking if this is not something unusual that you encounter, or do you usually just see the same things all over the time and this was just something extraordinary?
So that's a little, I think you're leading the question a little bit. So I do tend to try and research all of the things that I encounter during tests. If they are 1 week tests, that usually happens between Monday and Thursday because everything else happens on Friday. So I personally try and do as much research on a target as possible, but that's not always possible because there's a lot of products and services out there that are not open source or are not freely available for trials or stuff like that. So, and I've worked with a number of people in this room, so you can ask them, I guess. But yeah, I like to research things as much as I can and try things in labs first.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Yes, sir.
Did you try to decrypt this encoded password which gives you uppercase plain text? Did you try to?
Okay. Did you try to go forward and understand how to decrypt this digit encrypted or encoded password that was present in the database?
Yep. So in the slide deck, I showed the uppercase password, and that was the code to decode it. So.
But did you try to understand what is the function that was used to do that? Yeah, how to get from password digits to plain text?
So you know what? I will just show you. Why don't I do that? Because that's easier, because I have about 10 minutes left. So here's dnspy. I'm going to show you all some reverse engineering right here. That's how Americans talk, right? So just get rid of all of that stuff because it, for some reason, adds all of it. Then I simply open up the SolarWinds Orion security one. Because that's where all the security goes in the security DLL, right? Where? Come on. There it is. So down here, down there. So the decrypt where's the encrypt hash? Let's see. Sorry, it's been a little while since I've looked through this thing. That's the RSA one. Where's the hash? Oh, I remember. It wasn't in this DLL. It was actually in a different one. All I did was, let's say that this was the code for it. All I literally did was copy and pasted it into another C# code, and it was done. So there was no magic. There was literally copy and paste. That was the entire magic that I performed on this engagement.
What's the outer logic behind this converting numeric to plain text? I guess it should be a professional cryptography.
Yeah, it definitely should be professionally encrypted, and they did that. They added that feature. However, for backwards compatibility, I guess, they still had the old version as well. And before I go, one small tidbit of information that they don't talk about, and when we first started this talk, we talked about how there's an agent, right? There's an agent that can be installed with these SolarWinds. Well, that agent has to perform actions on these systems, right? How do you think it decrypts the password to be able to use them? Because it's on a different system. It's not getting the plain text. It's getting the encrypted text over a network protocol, because that would be, insecure if it got the plain text. It has the same cert. The binary agent has the cert to decrypt everything in all of the installs.
Can I have my agent?
Who said it has the same cert? There you go. Nicely done.
Thanks.
Sure, no problem. All right. So demo failed, but I will post more about that. And other than that, thank you very much for your time. Whoa, what? What? No, I don't want any more questions. I don't want any more questions.
How many more minutes?
I don't know. He knows.
You got probably two.
Okay, go.
So thanks for sharing this.
Sure.
Pretty cool. But I'm more interested about the fun that you had, and what about the SolarWinds guys when they saw it? What about their fun?
What about the people from SolarWinds?
Yeah.
So I talked to them about it, and they basically said, you have to be admin to do all this stuff, so there's not a security problem.
That's fun.
That's really what it boiled down to. For the encoded password, they said that they'd already moved off of that, which I had their latest trial, so I knew that was false. For the admin, for the single cert with no way to to change it. They said that it's cryptographically sound. So, like I tried. I told them, but they basically said that you have to be elevated to get anything. So, no worries. Also, the nice thing about the cert being exportable is that any user can do it, and the database is MS SQL, so XP command shell enable cert util export, then you have the cert, or the Erlang stuff, right? So if you get the cookie. The other way that I was able to, and I'm sorry, as part of the demo, I was going to show you popping calc and then catting the Erlang cookie, but I didn't have a chance to do that. Anyways, that's it. Sorry. Thank you. Sorry for the change.